If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast as well with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM. What are you waiting for? Welcome back to All the Things That Keep Us Up at Night. Today's episode is part 2 of Heaven's Gate. So, when we last left off, Bonnie had passed away and Marshall's belief system started to change a little bit. Some people started leaving Heaven's Gate because it just didn't make sense anymore, and the way the beliefs were changing, it just didn't add up to a lot of people. So, the remaining disciples were trying to encourage Marshall to keep going and not to give up, and that they would pretty much stick by him through whatever happened. So, as their belief system started to change and shift, heaven was said to be a planet. This is where the most evolved lived. Your body was required to be left on earth for your spirit to take that journey to live there. The belief was that when they reached the next level, they would evolve on other planets. Now, Marshall's thoughts about Jesus were that Jesus was actually an alien on Earth. When Jesus was killed, his physical body came back from the dead, and then he was whisked away by a spacecraft. Now, according to Marshall's beliefs, Jesus found that humans were not ready to go to the next level when he first came to Earth. Marshall had a ceremony that married his followers, but not legally. It was just in a symbolic way. It gave them a sense of unity, and Marshall started to refer to Bonnie as the father. And when he would talk about Bonnie, he would refer to her as male pronouns, such as him, his, he. After a while, Marshall said that his followers needed his guidance. There was a hierarchy, and essentially the group wouldn't continue on if he died. The only way to salvation was to have a close bond with Marshall. After losing Bonnie, it seems like he was pretty lonely and he wanted a way to feel more of a bond with people. So the only way you can get to the next level is if you're close to Marshall. He also started referring to himself as Christ, and the disciples had to do the same. Some of the scientific things that they were taught and believed in stayed the same, but their beliefs shifted more towards religion towards the middle of the 1980s. They focused a lot on having faith and doing whatever Marshall said to do. In 1988, Marshall started preaching that Lucifer was brainwashing people, but his disciples could overcome this. Evil aliens that Marshall called Luciferians were trying to destroy all that he had built. And anyone that was politically correct, well, they were also Luciferians. So he and the group were starting to lay low, and not many people knew that their group was even still a thing. So now it's the early 1990s. Marshall and his following want to publicize their theology. They would encourage people to read books on the history of Christianity as well as UFOs. They did publish books that are on the website at heavensgate.com, and they might even still be available to buy. So Marshall and his group started to come out of hiding in 1992. They made a 12-part video series that was broadcasted via satellite. Members started to leave, and at one point there was only 26 members of the group. Marshall knew he had to do something about this and do it fast. May of 1993, the group's name changed to Total Overcomers Anonymous. They spent $30,000 to have a huge ad in USA Today, and they were warning people that this catastrophic judgment was going to take over the earth. 20 former members decided to come back to the group. Marshall started to be more lenient and not as controlling. He didn't spend much time with his disciples at all. He started to post a lot of what he taught on the internet. That came with a lot of backlash. This is when he started preaching about the idea of suicide being a possibility to make it to the next level. Except he didn't consider it suicide. He started to say that all humans had to get out of their bodies, leave them here, before they could travel to the next level. And this is when the group changed its name to Heaven's Gate. They all lived in New Mexico from June to October of 1995. They bought 40 acres of land and built their so-called Earth ship using wood and tires. Things started getting really difficult for Marshall to do because he was getting older, his health was declining, and at the time he was scared that he may have cancer. Marshall scrapped his plans for himself and the group, and they moved to San Diego, where they had a few houses. Now, sex was always taught by Bonnie and Marshall to be something that wasn't allowed. It was impure, and even thinking about sex was so-called human thinking. Desiring sex was definitely, according to their beliefs, something that would bind you to your physical body and you wouldn't get to journey to the next level. Marshall and 7 other men decided to get surgically castrated in Mexico. According to Marshall, aliens didn't have reproductive organs, and Luciferians were the only ones with genders. To somehow prove that they were all a non-sexual family, they would dress alike, and they all had the same haircut. All of these people are either bald or their hair looks like Lloyd from the movie Dumb and Dumber. I'm not even trying to make a joke about it. That's just exactly what their haircuts look like. So it's October of 1996. Things took an even more drastic turn when they found out about the comet Hale-Bopp, and they started learning more about this comet. At this time, they were living in a mansion in Santa Fe. 2 videos were made to their viewers about this being the last chance to leave Earth by leaving their physical vehicles here on Earth. They believed a spaceship was going to be coming at the rear of Comet Hale-Bopp, and that Bonnie was going to be on this spaceship as well, who they called their father T. And after they committed suicide together, their spirits would be free to go to the next level. After discussing this for a while, they thought, okay, this is it. It's happening. This is a spaceship that's definitely going to take our souls to another planet, and their father T, Bonnie, was going to be there to meet them and that this was just great. So because their beliefs were not the same as before, their bodies weren't going to go with them. They were going to get a new body when their souls went up into the spaceship to the next level. So when you go to the Heaven's Gate website at heavensgate.com, this is what is said on the homepage. Quote, "Whether Hellbop has a companion or not is irrelevant from our perspective. However, its arrival is joyously very significant to us at Heaven's Gate. The joy is that our older member in the evolutionary level above human, the Kingdom of Heaven, has made it clear to us that Hellbop's approach is the marker we've been waiting for. The time for the arrival of the spacecraft from the level above human to take us home to their world in the literal heavens. Our 22 years of classroom here on planet Earth is finally coming to conclusion. Graduation from the human evolutionary level. We are happily prepared to leave this world and go with T's crew. If you study the material on this website, you will hopefully understand our joy and what our purpose here on Earth has been. You may even find your boarding pass to leave with us during this brief window. We are so very thankful that we have been recipients of this opportunity to prepare for membership in their kingdom and to experience their boundless caring and nurturing." End quote.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris, host of the podcast Here's My Story. Here's My Story is about opening up and talking about life's tough stuff. Depression, anxiety, chronic illness, loss of a loved one, postpartum, cancer, as well as LGBTQIA+ acceptance. With each storyteller, we learn that we are not alone in this world, and that it's okay to talk about our problems. Like the story of Kathy Kleiner, Ted Bundy survivor, cancer survivor, and more. Stacy, who lost her husband to cancer and became a widow at the age of 37, or Angie, a loving mother who shared her story of support and acceptance of her transgender child. Follow me at Here's My Story Pod on Twitter and Instagram. To submit a story, or if you have any questions, you can email me at here'smystorypod@gmail.com. And please, subscribe anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. Thanks for listening. See you soon.
Also, this is a section that is called, quote, "Our Position Against Suicide," and it goes as follows. Quote, "We know that it is only while we are here in these physical vehicles, bodies, that we can learn the lessons needed to complete our own individual transition, as well as to complete our task of offering the Kingdom of Heaven to this civilization one last time. We take good care of our vehicles so they can function well for us in this task, and we try to protect them from any harm. We fully desire, expect, and look forward to boarding a spacecraft from the next level very soon, in our physical bodies. There is no doubt in our mind that our being picked up is inevitable in the very near future. But what happens between now and then is the big question. We are keenly aware of several possibilities. It could happen that before the spacecraft comes, one or more of us could lose our physical vehicles due to recall, accident, or at the hands of some irate individual. We do not anticipate this, but it is possible. Another possibility is that because of the position we take in our information, we could find so much disfavor with the powers that control this world that there could be attempts to incarcerate us or to subject us to some sort of psychological or physical torture, such as occurred at both Ruby Ridge and Waco. It has always been our way to examine all possibilities and be mentally prepared for whatever may come our way. For example, consider what happened at Masada around 73 AD. a devout Jewish sect, after holding out against a siege by the Romans to the best of their ability, and seeing that the murder, rape, and torture of their community was inevitable, determined that it was permission to evacuate their bodies by a more dignified and less agonizing method. We have thoroughly discussed this topic of willful exit of the body under such conditions, and have mentally prepared ourselves for this possibility, as can be seen in a few of our statements. However, this act certainly does not need serious consideration at this time, and hopefully will not in the future. The true meaning of suicide is to turn against the next level when it is being offered. In these last days, we are focused on two primary tasks. One, of making a last attempt at telling the truth about how the next level may be entered. Our last effort at offering to individuals of this civilization the way to avoid suicide. And two, taking advantage of the rare opportunity we have each day to work individually on our personal overcoming and change, in preparation for entering the kingdom of heaven." End quote. So it's March of 1997 now, and farewell videos were made and released. Here are some parts of their farewell statements.
Okay, we have Melody with us now, and Melody, would you like to tell us how long you've been in the classroom and something about that experience?
Oh, well, sure. I've been in the classroom since April or May of 1975. I guess it's almost 22 years. And it's been the best 22 years I could have ever experienced. There were a couple questions that I wanted to address specifically, or try to. I hope that I can pull enough from my older members' mind that my answers to those questions would be appropriate. There were a couple things that I suspected there might be individuals out there who would like to ask us if they had the chance. And one of those questions I thought people might want to ask is, how can you, when you, so many of you have so many capabilities and talents, when you could have done so much in the world, choose to throw all that away and go off with some cult and just lose your life? Okay, so in response to that, for one thing, you have to consider what we as individuals wanted to become. I think everyone in this class wanted something more than the human world had to offer. They were seeking some type of goodness, some type of rightness that they did not feel in this world. So that's one thing. You have to consider what we wanted. To us, we weren't throwing away anything that was of any value to us. The other thing that you may not realize, that if you truly have some goodness in you, I think you will come to realize, and that is that the idea that you can become something in this world and really make a difference is an illusion. Anyone who seeks to make a real change in this world, to go out and do something, is going to eventually come up to the realization that the underpinnings of this world are so corrupt that you really cannot succeed unless you're willing to compromise what you know in your heart isn't really right. You're going to be faced with that inside you, you're going to have to give up something that was of value in order to make a difference in the world. So you really can't accomplish that. And hopefully, if that is the path you've taken, where you're trying to make a difference, that when you come up to that point where you have to make a lesser decision, that you'll realize that you'll take the option of failure and go do some soul seeking and ask, why is this happening? Is there really a God? What did he have in mind for me? Is there something more? And as a result of asking those questions, you'll come to the realization that there is a higher evolutionary level above human that you can attain to and go after, and that you do not have to be satisfied with what's in this world. Now, the second question that I thought people might want to ask, and that is, do we really hate our mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers? Do we really feel that way? And I think one thing you have to realize, that each of us, in order to succeed at this task, has to know that we are the next level mind inside this vehicle. We have to totally identify as a child of the next level, see ourselves as part of that family, and know that that's who we are. that everything that was the vehicle is behind us and it isn't us. The attachments that each of these vehicles had were very real. For each of us, there were things that we cared about. There were individuals that the vehicle respected and loved and cared for very much. And in making the decision that we made to do this, we know that we broke hearts. We know that we hurt people. And we don't take that lightly. We didn't want to hurt anyone. Unfortunately, it's the individuals that these vehicles cared for the most that are actually the greatest threat to us. And as a next level mind with an allegiance to an older member and wanting to succeed at this task, we had to be very aware that influences would take our vulnerabilities, those things that we cared about, and use them against us. They would take the programming in the vehicle, and if they could, they would make us look backwards and forget where we were going. And that happened to a lot of our classmates. I mean, we're sorry to say that there are many that were with us that chose to give up an eternity of service with their Creator, closeness, and an opportunity to be to reach the fullest potential that their Creator imagined for them, and they gave it up for a few months or years of closeness to another human. And we prayed for the strength that we not do the same thing. We wanted to reach that potential. We wanted to know what our Creator had hoped that we might be, and through our older members, we've gained strength and discipline, and we've learned a lot. And in doing that, we had to recognize that programming, those attachments, we had to hate the things that will pull us back and be our enemies. And so we do hate the things that would pull us backwards because we don't want to fail. We wanted to succeed. We wanted to be close to our Creator. We wanted to become what we could become. And this may not be something that any of you can recognize at this point, but the love that an older member has for a younger member is a type of love that a human cannot experience. There's a selflessness, and a purity that goes beyond anything humans feel for each other. It's not a love that's based on satisfying mutual needs, which is really what almost all human relationships are. They're satisfying some mutual addiction. In a relationship with an older member, it's based on a shared desire to grow and serve the older members that created them and to please them. And I could wish for nothing more than that you may someday experience that as well. That's what I have to say.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have Presodi with us now, and we understand that you have something you'd like to say.
Yes, I do. I prepared a little statement for any in the world who might be interested in why I'm ready to go to the next level. And I hope that this will explain what it means to me. First of all, I consider myself extremely fortunate to have been chosen for this class and to have been in the keeping and care of two older members from the next level for the past 22 years. In 1975, I received a statement entitled Human Individual Metamorphosis, and even before I finished reading the message, I knew I was hearing my Lord, my shepherd's voice. After meeting T and Do the first time, I instinctively knew who they were and where they came from. There was no doubt. It's like a knowing inside that you can't deny. The information that they brought us about the next level and their ways and conduct were not human ways, and it became more clearly evident the more I was with them that I wanted to become like them. Their consistent caring and conduct was evidence to me that they were from a world I wanted to be a part of. Over the years, that desire has never changed. Now the time has come for us to leave this world and to return to the level above human as new beginners. As new beginners in the next level. By dropping these bodies, we will receive the inheritance we have been promised of eternal life in a physical next level body to be in service to the Chief of Chiefs. It is my choice to lay down my borrowed physical body to prove to the next level my love and the trust I have in my older members, for what they have shown me as their example of what I can become. My thoughts in these last hours are only of joy and wonder at the thought of going home to my older members and being in T's house at last.
Thank you. Okay, we have Destody with us. And Destody, how long have you been in this classroom circumstance?
Since March of '76, that'd be 21 years.
Okay, and so you met T and Doe at that time, or did you attend a meeting? How did you find out about them?
Well, that's a long story, but suffice to say that when I heard the information, I was overwhelmed. I individually searched for T and Doe because I didn't make a meeting. And after about a month, I found them, and I've been with them ever since. Boy, that opens up a big door. You've probably heard from everyone, quite a few people before me, and they've all expressed what the class has meant to them and what they've learned in the class. But it's hard to express in human language what we know or what we feel from what we've learned in the classroom, and I'm no exception. I'm having a very difficult time. And I'll try to express exactly what I feel. T and Doe were two individuals that were known to, or were said to have come from the next level with information for humans on how to get out of this kingdom level into their kingdom level. Overwhelmed was a word that I use to express what went on with my psychic, with my physical body, with everything, just hearing that. It's something that I felt very close to, very dear to, and very important, and it answered a lot of things that I was asking consciously and subconsciously, which were things like, what's next for me? What is life about? Why am I here? What is the meaning of life? Since I've been in the class, I've learned the answers to all of those. And my older members, T and Doe, which are members from the next level, have been the best teachers to give that information. And as a result of that, I'm here, and I'm very, very happy here. I don't know what I did to deserve to be here. And I'm embarrassed that I can't express, without getting emotional, how good I feel about what I'm doing and how good I feel about being here and being given this opportunity to go to the next level. Just the opportunity, is the gift, is just it's overwhelming, is the only word that I can come up with now.
Well, I guess that answers any other questions we would have asked you, Destody.
I didn't know that I was going to talk so much, but
No, that was very clear.
like I said, we all feel very emotional about the gift that we've been given, and I'm the happiest person in the world.
Okay, thank you very much. We have Janody and Livodi with us today. Livodi on the left, Janody on the right. How long have the two of you been in this classroom circumstance?
Well, Janody and I, both these vehicles ended up being a couple that were in Oregon in 1975, and we took these two vehicles. You've probably heard of the news media story in 75 about a bunch of people disappearing from Wallport, Oregon. Well, we're still here and not for long. We're very happy and proud to have been members of Tito's class, and couldn't be happier about what we're about to do. Doubt was never an issue. Certainly, at times, temptation to the vehicle or dumb influences might turn our heads for this reason or that, but there's always a deep down knowing that from the moment of seeing T&O that this is why I'm here, to take this vehicle and do this task. And always knew that I knew T&O from before this time, that there was strong recognition. And Jen, felt the same way. She wants to talk about it.
The only thing I can think is that, it seems like probably the ones who will be, the blame will be pointed at would be T&O, and we've always had free reign to come and go and believe or not believe since day one in the class, and in fact more times than not T&O would put effort into pushing anybody out of the class that didn't want to be here, and wasn't just full steam ahead with what they knew the truth of the next level to be. And the funny thing is that we all came just human vehicles with minds entering those vehicles that had to take them over. And the crazy way that it works is that the more we put into practice the teachings and the behavior and the guidelines that T&O taught us, the proof of the truth that they held becomes more apparent, and behavior and discipline and ways of thinking that we had held all of our human vehicles became distasteful and something that was beneath us. So I have to say the same as Livodi, that the last thing that I would have thought on September 13th, 1975, was that in a week I would find myself as part of a group and leaving behind my human life and starting on this. But there was just a knowing and a recognition. I think recognition is probably the better word, knowing that that T&O were someone that I had known and respected prior to this incarnation. So we're looking forward to this. We're happy and excited, and I can't really think of anything else.
Well, it's probably old programming, but can't help but think of in the Bible when Jesus says, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." He was saying, "I'm here. I'm sent. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. I am the only way you can reach the next level of the kingdom of heaven." And now it's the end of the age. It's the same thing happening again. T&O are the way and the truth and the only source of life. And without our connection to T&O, we have nothing. So Christians miss it when they read the Bible, and they just don't get it because the atmosphere is so filled with misinformation. But it's so plain and simple and real and true for us. And we know it. You may not know it, which is okay. We have no fear. We're proud and looking forward to what's ahead. And we believe all our classmates feel the same way.
Actually, you all couldn't really know it unless you had done what we had done and been through what we had been through. But I think you can trust. I guess you could trust our judgment in this.
That's probably enough.
That's good.
Okay, well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
We just, are interviewing a number of people just to see a number of people express some interest in saying something on camera to the people that might, get this tape. And we just wondered if, if you had anything particularly you wanted to say to people.
Well, I just want to let everyone know how lucky and happy I feel to be here, and let you know that what we're about to do is certainly nothing to think negatively about. We're all choosing of our own free will to go to the next level with T and Do.
That's right.
And they are certainly not what the media is going to paint them out to be. I never got to meet T in this incarnation in her human vehicle, but I can tell you that Do is the most special, dignified, unhuman, objective person that you can ever meet.
That's right.
He has helped us so much and put up with so much and never done anything that seemed even close to the way a human would respond. And I guess that's really all I want to say.
That sounded pretty good.
Okay. And Wakenodi, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes. I think I feel just like Arasodi does, and if people would just know that we're not forced into this in any way, it's, our own choosing to do it, and I'm really happy that I made this choice, because there was a lot of things kind of working against me not to, I'm sure. I know there was people in the world who thought that I had completely lost my marbles. They're not right. I couldn't have made a better choice, and I think I need to every day thank T and Do on the next level for even letting me be here, because they don't need anybody. Just I could say a lot more too, but for some reason we always get kind of emotional when we start trying to convey our true feelings, because we know, I think, that the media is going to just whatever. They're not going to present it the way we would like to be presented. Anyway, I wish you could all be here. I wish you were as lucky and fortunate as we are, I guess.
And we're looking forward to meeting T real soon
Yes.
in her next level vehicle, and us in our next level vehicle.
And what Arasodi said about Do is just so right. I don't think any of us could be more happy.
Okay.
And that's all we got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, a few days ago, I've been in the class for 3 years, just about 3-4 days ago, and I don't know, I just feel like I've learned so much about the next level and Kingdom of God, Kingdom of Heaven, and on how best to cut all ties, attachments, and addictions to self and this world. And this is my prepared statement. It's very simple. And I don't know, I think my constant asking long before I entered the class was the key, the constant begging for the real facts, the real truth, as how to get out of this world and grow beyond it, and rise above it, and leave it behind, both self and this world. And T and Do are my older members, and they're from the next level, and they've shown me by their example and the next level ways, behavior and conduct for a beginner in the next level. And I must never forget that my free will and options and choices allow me to either keep looking up to the next level and my older members, or older members' chain of mind, or to look away, and which results in separation and death, similar to cutting a leaf from a tree. And as long as I look to my older members in the next level, I will have unlimited growth. And I look greatly forward to being of unlimited service in my new kingdom level, where all creation originates, also in my new next level vehicle, or body, or suit of clothes, whatever you want to call it. And I want to thank my father, Do and T, and prove my loyalty, and for them helping me and nourishing my next level mind, And I feel the utmost respect and honor for the price they paid to endure, for my sake and my classmates' sakes, the entering into such a world as this one has become. And I don't think words basically would do it at all. I don't know. All I can say is, what's next, and that I love Tea and Dough and the mixed level.
Just before we break, and
yes,
I'm not. What Custody said sounds a lot better than what I said. We don't know what's going to happen there. We don't know how much longer this civilization is even going to continue on, and so all this may be mute, but whatever time it's worth, that's why we're saying these things.
Okay. Well, thank you both very much. And I guess we'll move on to the next interviewees.
Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by MonaMoonNaturals.com. The creator of Mona Moon Naturals, her sister was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her cancer was estrogen-based, and they discovered that so many products that we use every day are made up of hormone disruptors. At MonaMoonNaturals.com, they sell chemical-free, safe lip balm and body whips and deodorants. 10% of your purchase supports the Breast Cancer Coalition of Rochester and their mission to support those touched by breast cancer or gynecological cancers. Shop Mona Moon Naturals, that's MonaMoonNaturals.com today and use the code PAIGE, Paige, and get 20% off of your purchase and to give back. In these videos of their final statements, it's clear that some of these members may have had emotional problems and some seem to possibly, and I'm just speculating here on the videos in full that I watched, that some of them may have slight mental issues. Some were mothers, students, businessmen, and women. Some had only been in this group for 3 years, and some for 22. Joan Culpepper, one of the group's original members who left and spoke out against the group, told People magazine in 1997, quote, "Many of these people weren't losers with low self-esteem. Applewhite's message connected some belief in them." End quote. Marshall made a video and said that the suicide mission was the final exit and, quote, "We do, in all honesty, hate this world." End quote. In a video titled Planet About to Be Recycled, the transcript was published on October 5th, 1996 to the website. Part of that video is in the beginning of part 1. So if you want to hear that, go back one episode to Heaven's Gate Part 1 and you can hear some of his final statements. The transcript in full is on the Heaven's Gate website if you're curious as to everything that he says, but it's so long that there's no way I can put all of the audio in here or even read the transcript in full. I'll post the information to the Facebook group as well. So on March 23rd, 1997, the group started to commit mass suicide over the course of 3 days. And they did so in the 9,200 square foot compound. So they started taking a deadly amount of phenobarbital, hydrocodone, drinking alcohol, and they reportedly mixed the barbiturates with pudding or applesauce. They placed bags over their heads to suffocate themselves. They all wore Nike shoes, and they were the exact same Nike shoes. Black clothes with these patches on their clothes that said Heaven's Gate Away Team. They wore purple shrouds, and they had a little bag with a few dollars in it, their IDs, and these were laying beside them. Marshall was one of the last ones to kill himself, and reportedly 3 of the members were said to have stayed with him while he passed away, and then those 3 committed suicide after Marshall was gone. So Joan Culpepper, the former member that I mentioned earlier, said, quote, "I still get teary-eyed when I think about it. When I think of them lying in the bed as bags were being put over their heads, I could almost hear them say, 'I'll see you on the spaceship.'" End quote. So an anonymous phone call was made to the police, which led them to the Rancho Santa Fe Mediterranean-style compound. 39 bodies were found lined up in bunk beds on March 26th. Marshall was discovered on the bed in the master bedroom. There was definitely a media frenzy that happened after everyone learned about how and why these people killed themselves. Marshall's picture was plastered on the covers of Time and Newsweek. His final video was also broadcasted on the news. Some reports said that Marshall Applewhite talked these followers of his into doing what he said, and that included taking their own lives. Some reports said that these people were completely manipulated by Marshall, and other reports were saying that they wanted to die because of their faith, which was molded by what he said was fact. So the big debate is whether this was mass suicide or mass murder. A lot of cult leaders make their members commit suicide, but it seems as though these members of Heaven's Gate had really strong beliefs and wanted to do this, but they also did this because they were taught that this was the only way to get to the next level. What do you think about this situation? Do you think it was suicide, or in a manipulative, twisted sense, murder? I was discussing a topic very similar to this with the ladies that host the podcast That Would Go Good with Vodka. They were covering the case of Michelle Carter and the death of Conrad Roy. Michelle Carter told Conrad to commit suicide when he would text her saying that he wanted to do it. He began taking his life when he got into his vehicle and started to pass away of carbon monoxide poisoning, but he got scared and he got out of his car. Well, she told him to get back in, which he did, and passed away. So it all comes down to, was it just morally wrong, or is it legally wrong? The same kind of applies here. After I watched all of the exit statements, they were smiling and crying tears of joy and seemed really happy. They really seem to believe in this, and as upsetting as it may be, this is what they wanted to advance to the next level. It's definitely a tough situation to wrap our minds around, that's for sure. I mean, they believed in what they were taught, so much so that they were willing to die for it. So do you feel like it was manipulation on Marshall and Bonnie's part? Or do you think that, they formed their own opinions and, it wasn't about brainwashing? I guess that's up to everyone to kind of speculate and have your own thoughts about it. Now, I did want to mention that Marshall's daughter, Lane, is Hannah Overton's mother. Now, if you don't know, Hannah Overton was accused of poisoning Andrew Bird, who was her adopted son. And this happened in Corpus Christi. Lane was married to Reverend Benny Sands, and he was actually convicted in 1984 and sentenced to 23 years in prison for the death of a 16-year-old female. Her naked body was found on Padre Island. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in there as a little history about Lane and kind of what she was going through. Okay, so as I was doing my research, I came across an interview on FanZine.com. Troy James Weaver decided to reach out to the email address I guess it's still on the Heaven's Gate website. This interview was in December of 2016, and I just really wanted to share this. Troy asks, "Who are you? Why is this website still up?" The representative says, "We were in the group for 12 years, and they asked us to keep the site up. What prompted you to ask this?" Troy, "I'm just curious. Do you still believe? Tell me about yourself." Representative, "Yes, we still have the same understanding as we did when we joined." "Do you mean that you woke up this morning and decided to surf the net to a website you have never been to before? Nothing on the internet brought you to this site." Troy, "Nothing brought me to the site other than curiosity. I've seen videos on YouTube I thought were interesting. Is there any kind of plan for a future comet?" Representative, "There will be no comet coming for anyone. As they said, that comet was just a marker. That's all. The next level does not time its activities to space debris. Whatever happens to humans in the upcoming recycling is for them to experience. Almost all of them would never qualify to go to the next level anyway." Troy, "What is the next level? What are the qualifications to get there? Do you have literature beyond the website?" Representative, "The simple understanding is that there is a real physical level above the human one here on Earth. It is not a spiritual existence. It is real individuals in real bodies, in real crafts, taking care of the issues of their planet. The next level, as it is called, created this planet and all of the life on it. The next level are the caretakers of not only this planet, but all the systems of the universe. From that, all the other understandings follow. They periodically come down to this planet to check in on this civilization's development. The last time they took a very close-up observation in human form was from about 1972 to 1997. The time before that was 2,000 years ago. At those times, they talked to those interested about the opportunity of the next level and how a very select few can enter into it only after a long period of transition and instruction." Troy, "Thanks. What profession are you in?" Representative, "Just in regular retail sales." Troy, "Cool. I'm in wholesale. Can you explain the evacuation of the body? I'm interested in that. Also, are you a human or just inhabiting a human body?" Representative, "We don't understand what you mean by evacuation of the body. We are regular humans. Only T and Doe were next level members who occupied a human body." Troy, "What are your thoughts on gender? Why do you keep referring to yourself as we?" Representative, "My task partner and I are here in Arizona answering questions. We recognize the male and female gender on Earth, but it doesn't matter to the next level and is gone when you enter it." Troy, "Do you have many people within your organization? What are your thoughts on suicide? I've read about it on the website, but feel like it isn't very clear." Representative, "The group ended in 1997. There is no organization or members. No one should commit suicide." Troy, So, why maintain the website? Obviously, if you still believe it, you are a proponent, member of something, right? The reason I ask about suicide is because if Doe and T were the only next level members, what does that say about the others who took their own lives? They were human, correct? Not inhabiting a human body, but human? I'm confused by this and what I've read. I'm just trying to understand more clearly. Also, what is a task partner? Representative. The website is to provide information for their future return. We are designated to maintain and care for it. Humans are not to commit suicide. Those 38 and those 38 only take on space-capable, next-level bodies and depart this planet. No human can do that or would be allowed to do that. We know you are confused about this, but those individuals did not commit suicide. They broke the bond of human connection and quickly switched to a next-level one. Now, when the representative said those 38 bodies, there were 39 bodies, but Heaven's Gate doesn't count Marshall as they don't refer to him as human. So Troy goes on to say, I think I get it. You have to reach a certain level, next level, to shed your human body. Can humans, obviously they can, reach next level? Also, do you think gender here on Earth can be fluid? Representative. Humans have to go through a lengthy classroom setup under the guidance of next-level teachers to even have a chance of conversion. No human relationship, not habits, no drugs, no sex, or even thoughts of it, and not human hang-ups of any kind. All family and social relationships are cut. Human gender issues can vary, but it is of no consequence in this issue since you walk out of all of it. Troy. Have you had any contact with Doe or T since the shedding of their human bodies? Representative. No. So Troy then asks if the representative speaking to him is Rio. Now, Rio was a member of Heaven's Gate who discovered the mass suicide. He had left the group 6 weeks prior to the deaths. He is still a believer, as are almost all ex-members of Heaven's Gate. To this day, no ex-member has spoken out against the group except Joan Culpepper. That we know of. The representative responded and said, No. Rio is in Los Angeles. We are in Arizona. Troy. Oh, are you still in contact with one another? Representative. Yes, occasionally. Troy. What year did you leave the group? Representative. 1987. Troy. Do you feel as though you missed an opportunity by not staying or being there with the away team? Representative. No, we will rejoin them, just not in this life. Troy. Is there anyone on Earth who is next level? Representative. No. No one from the next level is on Earth at this time. Troy. I thought you had to be taught by people in the next level to have a chance to become next level. Is that why the website is still up, as a tool for such lessons? Representative. Only a physical next level member can guide you through the entire process and graduate into the next level. The online information is for reference and preparation only. It cannot get you into the next level in this era. Troy. When is the next era? Representative. We don't know. So Troy cites the reference on the Heaven's Gate website and explains why he is confused about the content and context. He explains that people could take it as permission to commit suicide. Doe talks about how it isn't suicide, but staying on Earth is, and Troy attaches the section he's referring to, and then he says, quote, "See where I could be led to believe that there is a coded language, actually not so coded, accepting suicide as an option for a higher calling. That is, if you define suicide in the same way I do." Doe understood it as staying, not going. Separation from Earth was the main focus. Don't you think that it's dismal, to say the least? End quote. Representative. We can understand how many people got confused by this. They thought Doe was speaking to the public at large. We knew who Doe was speaking to. It wasn't the public. He was talking to a widespread group of former members who had been in and out of the group since 1975. There was literally hundreds of individuals scattered all over the planet, and as shepherd he had to gather them up. Doe knew that he could only be speaking to those who had that deposit of recognition that had brought them into the group and was still with them. These individuals had been adopted into the next level and could leave right away or wait until the next time the next level returned to Earth. It would be their choice. The next level knows there are more individuals who would accept the information after departure. We have been speaking with many over the past 20 years. Their time is coming, but will not be in this lifetime. We all have to wait for future incarnations to enter the next level. Premature death or human suicide goes nowhere except for triggering a new cycle of reincarnation. Troy. I understand, but don't you think that there should be an explanation on the website or a warning? It kind of seems irresponsible not to have one due to the people who may misunderstand. Representative. The group asked us to maintain the website as it was in March 1997. They did not have any warning on it. And that was the end of the interview. I also think it's important to highlight the ones that moved on to the next level in 1997. Of course, there was Marshall Applewhite. I also want to talk about the families of the people that passed away. They shared their insight into who these 38 people were. We know what happened to them, but we should know more about who they were as individuals, and some even explain when their loved ones left to join the group. So this was in People magazine, and it was posted on March 26th of this year. This was 23 years after the mass suicide. They do list the ages of the ones who have passed away, and I don't know if these are the ages they would be today or the ages they were when they passed. One sentence in one of these interviews did strike me to think that maybe it's the age they would be today because their brothers and sisters are around the same ages. But there's also some that are listed in their 20s, so it's kind of mixed, I think. So some of them, I think that that's the age they were when they passed, and some of it I think is what they would be today. So take the ages with kind of a grain of salt here, because I do think it's a mixed bag. I want to tell y'all about the Essential Being Company. This company started right when this pandemic hit, and if you're able to shop small and support small businesses, I do recommend Essential Being Company. The Essential Being Company sells personal care, essential oils, and aromatherapy products to help you relax and refresh. You can also give the gift of relaxation with their gift box sets. Essential Being Company offers free shipping on all orders, and you'll also get 10% off when you use the code ALLTHINGS10. That's ALLTHINGS10 at essentialbeingco.com. That's ESSENTIAL BEINGCO.com. Gail Mader, 27. No matter where Gail decided to roam away from her home in Sag Harbor, New York, her mom and dad were hopeful that she'd always come back home. Her dad Robert stated, quote, "We hoped she'd marry and settle down, give us some grandchildren." Robert, a design engineer for a manufacturing company, had this dream of what his daughter would become and to raise her own family. Gail never did what was expected. She was a free spirit, a spontaneous soul. Even when she was a teenager, she had done things her own way and on her own terms. Her mom, Alice, was a homemaker, and she said of her daughter, quote, "I hate to say that she was a hippie. She was more a bohemian," end quote. Gail was attending a local community college. She was going to get her fashion design degree, but before she could finish, Gail took off to California in 1991 with her boyfriend, a construction worker named Chad. They found a little forest cabin outside of Santa Cruz and settled down. Robert gave them $5,000, and Gail opened up a little boutique where she sold clothes and jewelry. In 1993, she and Chad broke up. Gail's dad, Robert, said, quote, "Chad said she seemed to be searching for something. Soon after, she went with a friend to the Southwest," end quote. While Gail was there, she started making friends and chit-chatting with some nice people that were in a passing van, members of the Heaven's Gate cult. Robert said, quote, "Gail wasn't street smart. She just got sucked in and couldn't get out," end quote. Gail would every once in a while send her parents cryptic letters, and every time these letters would come from a different location. In one letter, Gail stated, quote, "Knowing you've taught me good judgment in choosing what's best for myself, I hope you will respect this learning I've decided to pursue," end quote. This letter was written in April of 94 from Arizona. Another letter said, quote, "I really want you to be aware that what I'm doing is exactly what I want, and it makes me very happy," end quote. This letter was written in August 1995 from Lubbock, Texas. It was a fall day in 1994, and Gail called her parents out of nowhere. Her dad was very shocked, and he did what a lot of dads would. He told her that he would fly her back home. She declined his offer. Robert suggested that maybe she could visit if she was ever in the area. She told her dad, quote, "Maybe that might be arranged," end quote. However, she never did make it to see her parents. The next time that her parents would ever hear her voice was on the cult's farewell video. They described their daughter as appearing older and very tired. She said in the video, quote, "What we're about to do is certainly nothing to think negatively about," end quote. I think her statement is one that I actually put in this episode before I even knew I was going to find anything on the ones who passed away. So her exit statement is in this episode for reference of how she felt. But what Gail said didn't do anything to comfort her parents, as you can imagine. Her brother Danny, 20 years old and a college student in Florida. Her mom said, quote, "It was like a fatal disease. She was a victim. We just thought eventually she would wake up and say, 'I've had enough of this,'" end quote. Thomas Nicholas, 58 years old. Many years ago, Thomas told his sister Nichelle that he was waiting on a rendezvous with Comet Hellbop. Nichelle was in the show Star Trek as a Star Trek Lieutenant Uhura, and she was the one who played the communications officer who was torn between earthbound human life and a career on the Starship Enterprise. She went on Larry King Live, and she said that it wasn't until her mom died in 1992 that they heard from Thomas. They hadn't heard from him before that in 20 years. John Craig, 62. John's wife, Mary Ann Craig, told about John spending his days working late shifts in his Durango, Colorado real estate development office. One beaming hot July day in 1975, wife Mary Ann packed all of their 6 children, all from the ages of 8 to 18, into the car to go to a swim meet that was out of town. When they got home that evening, John had left a note, which was an outline of his business dealings and finances. With no warning, John, who they called Mickey, had just vanished. The only things he took with him, a little money, some clothes, and his Chevy Blazer. Mary Ann, now 61 years old, said, quote, "This was a real switcheroo. I'm the one who likes to read Stephen King," end quote. When John was 15 years old, living in Albuquerque with his mom and dad, he was a real outdoorsman, and by the mid-60s, he was running a premier dude ranch in Colorado. Just by the way he dressed and looked the part, he was cast as an extra in Butch and Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Dale Mackey, one of John's University of New Mexico frat brothers, visited in 1975. John went on and on all night about how he was really getting into this UFO cult. Well, Mary Ann, his high school sweetheart and wife that had married this man in 1954, really didn't take it seriously and paid no mind to his ramblings of the cult. But after John's frat brother left, John told Mary Ann that he had a meeting in Denver, and from there he drove to Stapleton Airport to meet up with Bo and Peep. It was maybe about a week later that John just up and left. Mary Ann was beside herself, mostly just not believing that he really left. She was in shock. She was a registered nurse, and she couldn't miss any work. All she could think was that John would grow delusioned, but instead John became the ethereal Brother Logan, second in command of the cult. In 1977, Mary Ann and John divorced, and they never spoke again. John stayed in contact with his children after he left. He even invited Kathy, their oldest child, who was a college freshman, to a recruiting session in Denver. But Kathy wasn't feeling the vibes. 10 years later, John arranged to meet all 6 of his kids at a resort in Durango. Kathy Craig Murphy, now 40 years old, said to People magazine, quote, "Some of my brothers and sisters didn't even remember him," end quote. John will be cremated and his ashes will be spread over the San Juan Mountains. His children plan to do that when the snow melts this spring. Margaret Richter, 46. Margaret was the class valedictorian of 1969, award-winning orator, and a drum majorette of the marching band. The then Margaret Field succeeded at everything she ever tried. A former classmate said, quote, "We expected her to become governor or president," end quote. She got married in 1969 to one of her classmates at Berkeley, David Richter, but after a few years their marriage went south, which left Margaret broken. Emory, her dad, said, quote, "That's what changed her," end quote. She went to UCLA and she earned her master's in computer science, but in 1975, her passion for life was fading. She soon after stumbled across the cult. That May, she sent her family a letter saying, quote, "Here's hoping I get a UFO trip for Christmas," end quote. Virginia, her mom, said that for 21 years there was basically no contact with their daughter. She says, quote, "If you're going to change the world, you stay here to change it," end quote. Susan Elizabeth Nora Popp, 53. Susan was an English major at Berkeley in the late 60s. She was outgoing, full of spirit and life. Her brother Bill Jenkins said that of her. He would even bring her along on motorcycle club outings. He said, quote, "We'd ride and stop for beers. Everyone loved her," end quote. Susan found work being an editor. She took a job with an LA computer company. At this computer company, one of her colleagues told her about the UFO cult. Traveling with her second husband to Oregon in 1975, this is where they parted ways. Susan stayed with the group. Susan's mother, Jane, says, quote, Susan couldn't have kids, and she was deeply disturbed by that, end quote. Her mom only saw her daughter maybe 2 times over 22 years. Jane talked about the fact of the cult separating the members from their families, saying, quote, to them, it sounded kind of Christian, but it's not a Christian act to renounce your family, end quote. Michael Barr Sandeau, 25. A UFO sighting might not have been more shocking to people that live in the Blue Ridge foothills of Virginia than finding out that one of their very own was among one of the Heaven's Gate members found dead. Michael's dad was an evangelical minister. Michael had been decorated for his service as an infantry paratrooper in Desert Storm in 1991, and his friends described him as a popular kid, the senior class president. Seeming so carefree, always wanting to have fun, and he was such a class clown. When Michael's suicide was made known to his family, it was shocking in more than one way. A lot of other families of the members of Heaven's Gate seemed to know their son or daughter was in the cult. Michael's family never knew he was in the cult at all. Norma Jean Nelson, 59. From 1990 to 1994, Norma lived in an apartment complex in Dallas, Texas, where everyone saw her often riding her motorized wheelchair. Norma liked to keep her private life just that way, private. She made it no secret, though, that she couldn't stand men, and she was estranged from her ex-husband and 3 kids. Norma told people she was a polio victim, and she didn't ever say who her many secretive visitors were. One of Norma's neighbors had just found out a few days before this interview that these visitors were members of Heaven's Gate. Suzanne Cook, 54. Suzanne and her husband Nick first went to a local meeting that was held by Marshall Applewhite 20 years ago. Susan and Nick were living in a community of bohemian houseboat dwellers at the time in California. Not long after they went to Marshall Applewhite's meeting, they left, but before leaving, they gave their daughter Kelly, who was 10 years old, cassette tapes, and on these tapes they explained why they were leaving, and they left Kelly with their friends. Kelly was on 60 Minutes, and she said, quote, it happened all very, very quick. My understanding was they left to go to the next level, to be with God, end quote. Former neighbors of Suzanne said that she was a gentle, quiet woman. She was fascinated with computers and space. One person said that she was real low-key and she liked being in the background more than the forefront. Nick quit the cult, but Suzanne stayed for what Nick said was the final leap of faith. He says that he thinks she is probably on the mothercraft somewhere. Jacqueline Leonard, 72. Jacqueline and her husband, Charles, lived in Des Moines, Iowa. Charles was an optometrist, and together they raised their 3 kids. They always talked about religion and serving God. Jacqueline's deep sense for spirituality was what pushed her to leave her family behind, including her mom, Neva Garrity, who is now 94 years old. She joined Marshall's group in the mid-70s, but she was so torn over the decision that she was one of the few members who kept in constant contact with her family. Their daughter said, quote, I've been luckier than some. I've had a lot of time to sort out some of these things, end quote. Their daughter has been taking time over the years to study the cult's philosophy, which separates suicide and death. She said, quote, Mom always said she would leave in a beam of light, end quote. Susan Strom, 44. Susan aspired to be a botanist, and she was a summer camp counselor. She was almost about to graduate Oregon State University in 1975 when she went off with Marshall's group. Her dad, Lyle, who's a senior U.S. district judge, says, quote, "I guess this group just came around with flyers and she decided to join," end quote. Lyle and Susan's mother, Regina, did receive letters here and there and phone calls from Susan. Lyle stated, quote, "I always considered it a cult, but she always seemed happy. She had plenty of opportunity to leave," end quote. Her dad always encouraged her to come back home.
Hello, this is Eric Carter Lundeen, the host and producer of True Consequences, a true crime and mystery podcast with stories based in New Mexico and the American Desert Southwest. We'll uncover cases such as the Toy Box Killer, one of the worst serial rapists and suspected serial killers in New Mexico's history. We will also discuss mysteries such as alien sightings, as well as hauntings and other weird things that happen in this area of the country. I hope you'll give me a chance and listen to True Consequences. I think you might enjoy it. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Cheryl Butcher, 42 years old. Cheryl grew up in Springfield, Missouri. Her father, Jasper, describes her as the perfect daughter. The retired federal corrections officer said of his daughter, quote, "She was a good student. She did charity work, candy striper stuff," end quote. Cheryl's mother, Virginia Norton, said, quote, "Cheryl was a loner. She watched a lot of TV and read. Making friends was hard for her," end quote. When Cheryl was in the group, she wrote her mother a letter, and it said, quote, "Mother, be happy that I'm happy," end quote. And another time, she ended a letter saying, quote, "Look higher," end quote. She was a shy person who was smart, and she taught herself to be a computer expert, and she spent half of her life in the Heaven's Gate group. David Van Sinderen, 48 years old. David's dad was a former phone company CEO. David became an environmentalist. His younger sister, Sylvia Abate, stated, quote, "When I was 4, he saved me from drowning," end quote. She says that he told his family when he was in the group, quote, "Don't be hurt. I'm not doing this to you. It's something I have to do for me," end quote. He went to see Sylvia in 1987. He was very much a backseat driver, which confused Sylvia since he wasn't like that before. He apologized, and he told her that members of their cult drove around with a partner, so there was an extra set of eyes to be safe. Sylvia said that it was just the kind of care that they had for each other in that group. Alan Bowers, 45 years old. Alan spent 8 years with Heaven's Gate in the 70s before he went back home to Fairfield, Connecticut in the early 80s. He landed a job as a commercial oysterman. In 1988, Alan's wife divorced him, and his brother Barry passed away in a boating accident, which he drowned. This obviously all affected Alan. He had 3 children. The family moved to Jupiter, Florida, that is. He wanted to be near his stepsisters, Susan and Joy. Susan said, quote, "He came down here to make a new start, but he never could quite get it together," end quote. In 1994, Alan was working for a moving company, and he ran into someone he knew from the group at McDonald's in New Mexico. Joy stated, quote, "He felt like it might have been destiny. He was vulnerable. He was searching for peace," end quote. Margaret Bull, 54 years old. Reports say that her name was Peggy Bull, and she was one of the cult's first members in the middle of the 1970s. She was raised on a farm outside of Ellensburg, Washington. She was a shy kid, but she was a cheerleader in high school and a member of the Wranglerettes, which was the name of the drill team. Brenda McIntosh was roomies with her when they were attending the University of Washington, where Miss Bull got her BA in 1996. Brenda stated, quote, "She belonged to all the intellectual type of groups. It was sometimes hard to talk to her because she was just so smart," end quote. English professor Robert Sale said, quote, "She was open and ready intellectually," end quote. About 3 weeks before Peggy/Margaret took her life or, quote, went to the next level, her dad passed away. Iris Rominger, a childhood friend who thought she left the cult, when she found out of her suicide, she said, quote, "I guess it's kind of a blessing," end quote. Alfonso Foster, 44 years old. Alfonso was full of potential and promise. He was very smart, and people said he was charming and handsome. He loved books on philosophy and spirituality. James Hannon roomed with Alfonso in Minneapolis in the 70s, and he said of Alfonso, quote, "He didn't do so well on the practical details of his life," end quote. Alfonso didn't do well at holding jobs. He was such a free spirit. His mother passed away in the 80s, and he sunk into a depression. James wasn't at all shocked when Alfonso decided to join the group in 1994. He had only talked to Marshall Applewhite for about 20 minutes, and that's all it took before he decided that's what he wanted to do. James said, quote, "He didn't like much about life in this dimension. He wanted to go beyond," end quote. David Moore, 40 years old. David was an angry 19-year-old, over-emotional with dark, wavy hair. In 1975, at the age of 19, he saw a cult meeting in a park right by his house in California. Not long after this, he vanished. For 21 years, his mom, Nancy Brown, tried to find him, and she organized a parent support group. She eventually saw him 2 times over the course of a few years. She was accepting of what he wanted to do, and she was proud that he became a certified computer network engineer. Even though she rarely saw her son, it didn't help the hurt and the sadness when she found out that he committed suicide. She told the Washington Post, quote, "It's been, I'd say, 21 years of losing. It doesn't end," end quote. Julie LaMontage, 45. Julie was raised by a foster family, and as a kid, she spent most of her time studying, and when she got older, she got her nursing degree at the University of Massachusetts, at Amherst. In 1974, shortly after she graduated, she unfortunately saw her best friend drown. She remained really close to her biological father, Jules, and she watched him pass away of cancer. Her brother Andrew stated that the deaths just made her collapse, and they could never get her back after that. She was a drifter, staying in several communes until she found Heaven's Gate in the late 70s. There, she was Marshall Applewhite's personal nurse. Darwin Lee Johnson, 42. Darwin believed in UFOs and aliens wholeheartedly. He joined Heaven's Gate in the 70s, but he left to play guitar and write lyrics for Dharma Combat, which was a Utah-based rock band. In 1994, Darwin saw an ad for a Heaven's Gate seminar. A few days later, and he was gone. The producer for the band at the time said, quote, "He told me he was removed because he couldn't measure up to their standards. He always felt bad about that," end quote. And that was referring to why Darwin left back in the 70s. Robert Arancio, 45. Robert was born in Brooklyn and was brought up in Miami. He studied architecture at 2 colleges in Florida before he moved to Berkeley, California in the mid-70s. He met Bonnie and Marshall, who were going by Bo and Peep at that time. Robert's sister Joanne said, quote, "He felt he had a purpose. He was part of a community," end quote. After Robert joined, he only went to see his parents in Florida twice for visits that might have lasted 2 days at the most in 1984 and 1987. Each time he would be on his way there, he would let them know that he was on his way. He told his relatives that he had plans to leave the cult, but that never happened. Joanne stated, quote, "We're grieving the loss of my brother, but we're also grieving the loss of hope that he'll never come home." End quote. Gary Jordan St. Louis, 43. Gary was asking the real hard questions as a kid in Modesto, California, such as, what am I doing here? Are there spaceships? And why does Mom drink? His younger brother Guy said, quote, "He would drive my mother nuts, and my mother was half nuts already." End quote. Their parents had gotten a divorce. Things were so tense, and the two lived with their mom, Carolyn. Guy continued to say, quote, "He always was searching for answers to questions that he had no answers to." End quote. Gary's endless questions finally wore Carolyn down. She had remarried and had 2 daughters by her then husband, Aaron and Dana. Carolyn was soon divorced again, and when Gary was 10, he went to stay with his dad, who was a general contractor named Lewis. Gary was such a handsome young man. He was a smart student. He was the junior class president, and he loved books that were about astrophysics and extraterrestrials. Gary went on to attend the University of California, and his parents couldn't have been any happier for their son. He got in on a scholarship in 1972, but within a year, Gary dropped out. He started working as an engineer and married a receptionist, Carol Schaefer. As he was visiting Berkeley in 1974, he came across Heaven's Gate. His brother Guy said, quote, "They said, we're all caterpillars right now, but we have the ability to develop into butterflies." End quote. Gary was ready to leave his life behind to join Heaven's Gate. His family didn't hear from him for 14 years. He finally came around in 1989, and he was just in time to say his final goodbyes to his mom, who was dying. His wife, well, she divorced Gary shortly after he took off to be with the cult. For the next 3 years, he removed himself from the cult because he was having his own struggles with refraining from sex. At least, that is what his family believes. While he was away from the cult, he was a computer programmer at Denver's Stapleton Airport, and he was getting closer to his half-sister Dana. She moved in with Gary while she was working as a paralegal. Gary started getting involved hardcore with 2 different women during this time. In the end, Heaven's Gate still tugged at him mentally. He left his girlfriend, Shelley King, who was just beside herself, in February 1992. He said to her, quote, "I want to join my Heavenly Father and my classmates." End quote. His half-sister Dana also decided to join Gary. Shelley King said, quote, "Most people don't try to make things more complicated than they are. These people were so smart they thought that the world must be more complicated." End quote. LaDonna Brugado, 40 years old. Al Wallace was in his tenant's bathroom fixing a faucet in Englewood, Colorado in 1993 when he discovered that LaDonna was devoted to the New Age. Al said, quote, "On the 4 corners of the bed there was a chiffon canopy running up to a crystal in the center, like a pyramid, and on each corner there was a pyramid crystal." End quote. Placed on her altar beside her bed were candles and crystals. LaDonna had just been divorced and moved to Englewood from the Northwest. She brought along her little girl, Jacqueline. In 1994, LaDonna sold all she owned and left town. She told her neighbors that she was about to go on a religious hiatus. Al Wallace said, quote, "If you met her on the street, she would have been the girl next door who was simply trying to get by as a single mom. You would never have imagined that it could have gone this far." End quote. Joel Peter McCormick, 28 years old. Joel's stepbrother, Jeff Van Valkenburg, said of Joel, quote, "He had no sense of fear," end quote. Jeff remembers when kids older than his stepbrother would go out at night with flashlights to catch frogs. Joel insisted to go. After he graduated from high school in Madison, Wisconsin in 1986, Joel, who was very much a big fan of Star Trek, moved to Seattle to figure out which direction he wanted to take in life. By 1994, he made the decision to join the UFO cult. His mother, Megan, was just completely upset by this. He wrote a letter to her to try to reassure her, saying, quote, "Trust me, I'm doing fine, and continue to grow toward the future," end quote. Judith Rowland, 50 years old. Judy and her husband Bob had been married for 9 years. Bob was a heavy machine operator who returned home after work on April 10th, 1975. He discovered a note from Judy. They had 2 kids, Cindy, who was 8 at the time, and Joey, who was 6. The note said, quote, "I went to walk with the Lord," end quote. Judy used to be a model and was recruited to the cult by her mom, Lorraine, who says that they were his first followers. After they joined, they rarely spoke to each other. Lorraine, who is in a few documentaries, said, quote, "We had to break through all that humanness," end quote. Lorraine left the cult after being in it for 5 years. Bob says of his wife Susan and mother-in-law Lorraine, quote, "They had a meeting behind my back and Marshall got a hold of their mind," end quote. Yvonne McCurdy Hill, 38. Eartha Hill was the mother of Stephen. His wife Yvonne invited Eartha to their home in Cincinnati, and she told her that they were forsaking everything and everyone, which included their newborn twins and 3 other children, to be with God. Eartha Hill says, quote, "He said, 'Mom, I love you so much, but I have to go away.' Then he played a song about friends and relatives meeting again after death. I'd never felt that kind of fear. It just drained me," end quote. Stephen was an inspector at a tile company, and he learned about Heaven's Gate first. He searched the internet for anything he could find. Yvonne sorted the mail at the post office, and she ended up being a true believer. Marshall was real careful about keeping Yvonne and Stephen apart when they joined the group. Yvonne went with it while Stephen rebelled. Eartha said, quote, "He saw something was wrong in there. He said they were bickering inside the cult." Yvonne was going to leave with her husband, but Stephen got sent on an errand, and while he was running this errand, Marshall talked her into staying. Once Stephen left the cult, he made no attempts to even reunite with his kids, who were now being raised by other family members. But he was determined, obsessed even, about getting Yvonne back. Up until the very end, he kept in touch with certain members of the cult over the internet. Eartha said, quote, "He thought she would come out. It's so sad. When he heard she was dead, he just broke down," end quote. Denise J. Thurman, 44. In 1973, Denise made the trip from Locust Valley, New York to Rancho Santa Fe, California. Denise used to be a peppy, vibrant, full-of-life high school cheerleader. She was halfway through her junior year at Boston University, where she majored in psychology, when she dropped out. Her and her boyfriend went on an adventure, heading to a West Coast commune. Her college roomie, Sandy Nash, said, quote, "She was deeper than most people at 17 or 18 can be. Denise was into a less materialistic way of life. She was a hippie, but didn't go overboard. The last birthday card she gave me said something like, 'Dear Sandy, there is no purpose to friendship other than the deepening of one's soul,'" end quote. Lindley Earhart Pease, 41. Lindley lived in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, and wanted to start his own business following the example of his parents who owned a restaurant and hotel. In 1978, he was recruited by Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite. Lindley was in his third year at Plymouth State College. He left the cult in the early 80s, earned a degree in management, and married. Lindley worked as a car salesman. In 1994, his marriage fell apart, and both parents had passed away. He has a sister, Sylvia, but he cut contact with her. She said, quote, "I had no idea he was back in the group until I learned that he was dead." End quote. Jeffrey Howard Lewis, 41. After Jeffrey served in the Navy, he spent 10 years in the cult. He left Heaven's Gate, but came back to the cult 12 years later. His friend David said, quote, "I told him he should think about anything that requires you to give up your friends and family, but he said he wanted to go back." End quote. Jerry, Jeffrey's brother, told the Lubbock, Texas Avalanche Journal, quote, "He felt he didn't have the meaning he had when he was in the group." End quote. Erica Ernst, 40. Erica grew up in Calgary, Alberta. She had been dating Frank Lyford for 2 years when they came back from a 6-week trip in Europe, and they stumbled upon Bonnie and Marshall during a 1975 Oregon camping trip. Not long after they met them, they sold what they owned and left their home. Frank left the cult in 1993. He says, quote, "I made my choice, and she made her choice to stay." End quote. Erica's sister, Heidi, said, quote, "They wanted to see the world. I wish they had done that on their own. She would still be here." End quote. Lucy Eva Pescio, 63. As a kid in Pueblo, Colorado, Lucy couldn't stand wearing dresses. She was the best marble player on the playground, and she delivered the newspaper, a paper girl. She was a tomboy through and through. Her older sister Jean said that Lucy would tell all the boys at school that her name was Tommy. Lucy was shy even when she moved to Los Angeles and began working for Packard Bell. Her brother Joseph says that Lucy didn't have many friends. In the late 70s, she found friends in Heaven's Gate. She called her sister Jean in 1989 and had one message: "I'm alive and I'm happy." Joyce Scala, 58. Joyce was raised in Minnesota and married a Navy officer. One time, she even won a beauty contest on the base. She first lived in Denver, Colorado, where she gave birth to twin girls. Their little family settled down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Joyce had earned a degree in journalism in 1975. When she left, she was working on air for a local TV station. She went to a cult seminar, and that's all it took. A family friend stated, quote, "Joyce was always a real 50s type wife. Then she did a complete change." End quote. Oh, so this concludes our Heaven's Gate episodes. A wild ride. I hope you enjoyed listening. Next week, I will have a very special guest, and I can't say much more than that, but you'll see. It's going to be very emotional, that's for sure. But I wanted to say that the Heaven's Gate website is still available at heavensgate.com. You can go there and they have links to videos. There are videos all over YouTube. It's very interesting. So if you're curious, just letting you know that the website's still up if you want to look for yourself. It was made in the 90s, and you can definitely tell it's a 90s website. It's very, very 90s, but I hope you guys enjoyed this 2-parter, and I'll be back next week. Thank you guys so much for listening. Stay safe and stay healthy. Talk to you soon. Please stay safe, stay aware of your surroundings, and don't become a subject on my podcast because I love you.